I'm your host, Monica Patrice, and I am bringing to you the second part in our three-part series focused on men's mental health. And today I have Shams with me, also known in our world as Boii McCoy. He is a writer and a creative. I'm so excited to have him. And I just want to thank you, Shams, for coming on and sharing your story and telling us a little bit about your life and kind of what's been going on the last few years in regards to mental health. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's definitely an honor to Beth to speak on like men's mental health. Like it's been a journey these past few years navigating it. Especially for me being diagnosed in 2021 with bipolar 1 and navigating the world with that, even as a husband and father, as an artist, and especially like in all the other roles that I play in my life, it definitely requires me to, stay on top of those type of things and just like show up in the world like as healthy as I can be.
I want to talk to you about your bipolar diagnosis, but before we get into that, maybe if you want to tell listeners how you started out and how you became Boii McCoy.
Let's see. First, I originally went by the boy because that became like my family name. Like no, my real name is Henry. But I go by Tabriz and Boii McCoy, but no one in my family has ever called me Henry. Like, my dad's name is Henry, but I have three other sisters, and I'm the only boy. It became like a thing. If we all got in trouble or something like that, they'd be like, the boy did it. So it became a thing where it's like my mom, all my sisters started calling me a boy. It got to the point where like even like my Christmas presents and my gifts and stuff like that just said Boii as boy on it. So it's like, but yeah, that's where the name comes from. But I guess when it comes to where it all started from a creative aspect for me, I started off as a recording artist. I was rapping here and there, like when I was like 26 and whatnot, and like learning all that. But in 2020, the world shutting down with COVID, I stepped away from recording music and I just embraced writing poetry, just writing in all different type of ways and stuff like that. And I felt, I felt like I got like a different fulfillment from it, even from doing music. Music is still like a big like part of my life, but just the way that I was writing from raw experience. I was just writing from just like a vulnerable space, and especially in a way too, where it's like where sometimes me writing as an artist, writing as a recording artist, with just words, you can be very, very intentional. When you're making music, you can do that too, but it's just like, just really being real direct as like a writer, just speaking about things that like I was like suppressing in myself, like writing about like my traumatic experiences and things that I was going through at the time. In 2016, my father passed away. In 2018, my sister passed away. So it's like I was doing like a lot of grieving. I found like a lot of comfort and joy. Like this kind of just brought me back to life, actually speaking on like things that I was actually going through in my real life. And not only that, the joy came from actually being able to, speak on those type of things and like people actually being able to relate to it. Apart from like just at the time, like I said, when I was making music, I feel like I was just doing it for all the wrong reasons. But I found a different purpose in the way I was writing.
And it really has proven the resonance with so many people. And I think that what happens with us creatively is once we start to really show up authentically, that's when the people really start to gravitate towards us. So if you are listening and you have not had an opportunity to check out Boii McCoy's Instagram page, I highly recommend that you do. How would you describe your writing?
I would say it's thought-provoking. It's really very self-reflective. I would say one thing, I don't like giving advice, especially kind of like as like a writer and as a poet. I don't identify myself as like a guru or like a spiritual leader or those type of things. Nothing against those type of things, but that's just not what I find myself doing. because I guess the fear of like, I don't want to lead anyone astray. So it's like, as like a writer, as like a poet, it's just like, it's just me giving my own self-reflection, you know? And it's just like, in that exchange of giving myself to people and sharing that with the world, if someone can like see themselves in it, that's the beauty of that, you know?
For sure. For sure. And you write a lot about relationships.
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to like writing about relationships, like I met my wife when I was 17. I've been walking this road of being, you know, just being closely intertwined with a person, all these different versions of myself and all these different versions of her, you know, just from being a teen to a teen, like trying to find themselves in the world, even just figure out what they want to do, like as far as like career wise, or, you know, finding out just finding out who you are when life happens, you know, it's just like, you know, just what, like, yeah, it's just, I guess when it comes to like relationships, it's like, I've just been walking that road for so long when it comes to like, realizing like what it takes to actually make it work with someone, you know, because, you know, in this day and age, I feel like a lot of people know how to leave, but like a lot of people don't know how to stay, you know. It's just like a lot of people, it's like, you know, I read something a while back, you know, it's like the difference is like a lot of people back then, like people will look for all the reasons to stay, but like in this day and age, everyone looks for just one reason to leave.
Yeah.
And, you know, instead of like having conflict resolution skills.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, that's really like the biggest thing I believe when it comes to like relationships. Everything isn't going to be happy and rainbows all the time. You're going to have conflict resolution skills. You can't up and leave. You can't just brush it under the rug every time there's like a friction or tension. It has to be attended to. Whereas, like I said, like you're going to live in a toxic environment, or, you know, you're going to end up like breaking up or splitting up. At the end of the day, I think people just need to really just tighten up on their conflict resolution skills. That's the only type of way you're going to have longevity in relationships.
Yeah, you said you can't just get up and leave, but I would reframe that to say you can, right? And so what is really, and you and I talked a little bit about this before we started recording, what really makes relationships, and your relationship specifically, so beautiful is that the two of you choose to stay. You choose each other every day, especially to have started this relationship so young. So let's like take it back a little bit. You mentioned you met your wife when you were 17. Like, where did you get your ideas of masculinity from? Like, who helped you or who had influence over you during that time?
Honestly, I grew up around my sisters. I had 3 sisters. I was always around feminine energy.
Okay.
My dad was around too, but just my sisters played a big role in it too. Honestly, it's just like, I guess like it came from me, guessing me being the youngest out of the 3. Not only that, but like them actually taking care of me, looking after me. It wasn't always like that. They would gang up on me and like, you know, but it came to a point in my life where I accepted these are my sisters. I'm going to have to coexist with them and stuff like that. So to me, it was just like I never grew up hating any of my sisters. That kind of like my relationship I had with my sisters extended out into the world, into how like I treated other women, I looked at other women in a sense of I just want harmony. That's what I had to do at home with being the only boy amongst my sisters and stuff like that. But apart from that, like my dad, I guess my dad played like a different role in that. So my dad passed in 2016, and my dad was a great father to me. When it came to him being a husband to my mom, he definitely lacked a lot. To me, it's like he showed me just like a lot of examples of what not to do.
Okay.
As I gotten older, I've forgiven my dad for those type of things that have happened in the way that he kind of like treated my mom. It was just like there'd be moments like where, you know, like my mom and dad would be arguing. My sisters would be like screaming, like kind of get her divorced, get her divorced, get her divorced. it's just like, here I am, it's like the younger brother, the little baby boy of the family. And like, to me, it's like I've had a strong relationship with my mom and my dad all throughout my life. When moments of stuff like that was happening, I didn't really understand it. Like I said, I've always had a close relationship with both of my parents in that regard of me knowing that, like, I needed them in a sense, that the love that I had for them. But there's these moments where they would argue, my parents would argue, me seeing my mom crying. That affected me as like a young man growing up. It's like, well, I don't ever, like, to me, it's like, I don't make my mom cry and stuff like that. Like, to me, so it's like, I want to, like, that, like, to me, it's just me being, especially my mom is like an Aquarius too. Like, I'm an Aquarius. My mom's birthday is like 2 days after me. So it's like, me and my mom are very much alike in a lot of ways. Especially me being the only boy to her. I was always very empathetic for my mom. It just made me like, I just don't want to ever make like my partner, my wife, or whoever I'm with ever feel like this. I don't want this for myself. I was just so eager to like get to that point where it's just like, nah, I'm not going to do that. So it's like, I became like a romantic at like a very young age. It was just like, I understood like the beauty and love and romance at a very young age. So it's just like, when it came time for me to like go out to the world and be old enough to like, to create that with someone, like, to me, it's just like, especially when it came to like my wife, meeting her at like 17 and whatnot, it was just like boom, like I was already on that type of time, just because it's like I've seen so much of it, like in my, like the dysfunction that I grew up in my household. I was ready to to be the man that like I wanted like my dad to be for my mom.
Wow. I often talk about kind of on my own journey. I had a hard mom, and I remember like at a very young age saying to myself, I'm going to be different than my mom. But then like as I journeyed through my life, I repeated a lot of the patterns because I never understood or had the awareness that I needed to go learn skills to be different than my mom. Do you feel like you had the intention and you knew what to do to be different? Or like, how did that, I mean, to meet your wife at 17, I would imagine like who you were then and who you are now are two totally different people. So do you feel like even though you had that intention, like you knew how to be a different man than what you had saw growing up?
Honestly, it's wild that you say that, because that's like the truest shit when it comes to that. I've always used to say I can never see myself being like my dad. And I always just say, I'm nothing like my dad. I'm nothing like my dad. But then as I got older, like, as you said, like, as you get older, I guess in the ways you do repeat some of those patterns and stuff like that, because, it's just like, maybe because you're like, our parents didn't have the tools at the time, or it wasn't really, like I said, that lesson wasn't really passed down to us because it wasn't healed or something like that. It was this unchecked trauma or unresolved trauma or something like that. So I think there was a time where when it came to like, I was having choices, people looking at me as like an attractive male, the choice of being how my dad was. I could go down that path of being with like all these women. That's what my dad, there was so much like infidelity, like for my dad and with my mom. I was like 12 years old, and there was a situation, me and my dad were driving, and he was telling me about all the times that he cheated on my mom. Because at that point, I didn't even know anything about that. So for me, that was just a very big, like, whoa for me. And it was just like, after I learned that, it's always been in the back of my mind when it came to fighting temptation in the world. Like, it's because it's literally all around. I'd be naive, but it's unrealistic to say that there's not temptation in the world. That like everyone faces it. I'm always reminded to not go down that path.
What was his reasoning in telling you that?
I believe like he was telling me in a sense of like, of him not being perfect. But when it came like he told me that I didn't love him like any less as a dad. I'm older. Like I said, I've forgiven my dad for those type of things. Because everyone's just been on their unique journey, especially when it comes to even making mistakes. He spent like those years just trying to make amends for all those things that he's done in the past. Yeah, I think he was basically telling me just in a sense of just kind of just put things in perspective as far as just like of what he was dealing with at the time. I've seen him do better when it came to even like him going to church more, even just kind of, I could tell he was just like, even during that time period, like when he was telling me that, I just kind of felt he was like in a different space and stuff like that. But as time got on, him and my mom's relationship even got better.
So did your mom and dad stayed married?
Yeah, they stayed married. They stayed married, but my dad, they did separate. My dad moved to South Carolina. My mom stayed in Florida. But yeah, they still saw each other here. I was like a big kind of like centerpiece for them, especially like as my sisters got older. I became like the centerpiece for them. Like a bit of like, just if I'm with my mom, like my mom and dad could like coexist together with me. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. So, Shams, do you feel with your dad's passing? I lost my dad in 2018, so that's so interesting. And maybe has something to do with like why I resonate with your content. But do you feel like you and maybe even your sisters had opportunities? I know you said he started to become a better man for your mom, but do you feel like you and your sisters were able to like kind of have some closure before he passed?
I definitely did. I mean, this would be a little twist in the story, even my mental health. My actual first manic episode when it came to like my bipolar disorder was actually in 2009.
Okay.
When I was 19 years old, but I wasn't diagnosed yet. But in hindsight, just looking back at it, especially after being diagnosed in 21, those were the same symptoms and the same things I experienced in 2009. But as far as like my family and friends and stuff like that, nobody knew what it was. Everyone just thought I was going crazy. Everything just felt like a movie during that time period. It's just like, but my dad was living in South Carolina at the time. I went to go live with my dad for like a few years. And it was very grounding for me. And my dad actually, helped me through that. So I came through out of like that manic episode while in South Carolina, while with my dad. I don't think he even knew what it was or anything like that, but definitely in hindsight, like that was definitely my first like manic episode. But that time period that I did stay with my dad while I was kind of like recuperating, coming back to myself, like just reaching baseline. Those were like some of the greatest years of my life that I got to, like be with my dad during that time period. I went to the military, 2013. But yeah, I lived with my dad in South Carolina from it's like around 2009. Those were some of the greatest years of my life. Even when it came to when I mentioned about like forgiving my dad for like a lot of things and stuff like that, and just it came from like just understanding just like what my dad was actually going through.
Did your dad, do you think, have mental health issues, diagnosis, maybe that went untreated or unmet?
I definitely think that possibly could have been something, but like my dad was also in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force for 20 years. So I don't know, like I said, if he kind of ever went through like anything like that while in the military, but it could have been possibly something that could have happened like a little bit after. But like that's something that's real big when it comes to even to like Black men in our like culture and our community and things like that, is of even being diagnosed with like a mental illness or even depression, or even labeling yourself as being depressed or something like that, or trying to seek help and things like that. A lot of people is just like, oh, you just gotta just be tough, man it out and things like that, or even just go smoke a blunt or something like that. With and like, I'm not really alcohol. I don't drink alcohol like that. I drink occasionally, but like when it comes to like marijuana, and I would use like medicate myself. But like even even that for me is with someone being bipolar, so with having bipolar disorder, even too much of that like can send me into psychosis. So like I even so I gave that up too. I gave weed up. Like with December of 2023.
I think you posted about that.
Yeah. And honestly, I said that was probably something I was really proud of, because it's like ever since I got out the military in 2020, I've been smoking like nonstop. I would smoke like max maybe 7 joints a day.
Wow.
But like I said, I was just a high functioning like pothead.
Yeah.
But I could go about in my daily life. It did help me as like a creative, but it also led me into like bad habits. I'm definitely not knocking it for anybody. Just for me, it was like that's what it was affecting me, because of just the way I was using it. Just everything in moderation. I don't feel like not ever smoking weed is like a life sentence for me. It's just more so like of me reaching a point in my life where I could be myself without it. I proved to myself that I could be myself without it. Proved to myself I can write. I can, I could write. Just I don't need it. I don't need it to write. I don't need it to be great. I don't need it to feel good. And it's just like, especially not being sober and kind of just being my authentic self while sober, that's a totally different level of like self-discovery, another different path. And it's kind of like where I've been at. This whole uprising that I've had, like since being on Instagram, I've pretty much been high the whole time. So it's like, so I pretty much have been high the whole time. So it's just like now it's real different, but it's just like I brought that feeling back and have that joy that I had in doing those type of things, even as sober. So it's just like, it's a real good feeling.
What led you to start to want to figure this out and kind of try to maybe pinpoint what was going on with you emotionally?
Wait, so you're asking kind of just like how it is whenever I am like that?
Well, just maybe prior to you having your diagnosis, like what was happening, or what were you experiencing that made you actually seek some support?
Okay, so honestly, I felt like, the isolation. I was just one point, like my first diagnosis in 2021. It was prior to that, like I just felt myself. I was being really reclusive and stuff like that. One big thing too is just like I was like my weight was fluctuating, because when you're I guess even when you're manic or going through something like that, like you don't, for me it's just like I wouldn't eat. Like I wouldn't like need to eat. I'm not sure if you've heard of all like the symptoms of it, but even when it came to like spending money, feeling like the grandiose thoughts, feeling like you're on top of the world, feeling like you're God, feeling like you're untouchable. And honestly, even just without the diagnosis, even without like aside from bipolar disorder, why I really think it's kind of like important for people to be aware of those type of things is because anybody beyond just bipolar, anybody can go into a psychosis. If it's enough affecting your being, affecting you, anyone can go into a psychosis. And not like that, but go into it and not be aware of it and make decisions and end up in a bad situation and things like that. That to me, that's just it just goes from the lack of awareness of certain things that could lead to like even like you ending up in jail or ending up in prison just because you're not even aware that you're in a psychosis. But to me, I felt that. I felt like I wasn't myself, to the point where I was like, thank God, like I didn't do anything crazy or nothing like that when it came to that. Like, but on the come down from like that episode and stuff like that, when I was coming back down from it all, it was just like, that wasn't me. that's an awareness that I feel like even when it comes to men's mental health and things like that, is actually realizing what's you and what's not. And not only that, but actually just not being afraid to actually do something about it. Being able to check it the first time around. Like I said, like not being afraid to not being like I was talking to one of my friends about this recently, kind of, I was like looking at like you talk about like homeless people, you wonder how they got there. And it's just like, how did that happen? I can see how it happens. Like I can see it's years of bypassing your own mental health. It's years of not getting help. It's years of destroying your relationship with your families and friends to the point where you have no one to turn to the point where it's just like you're so far gone that you feel as if you have no support system anymore. When we look at kind of just like homeless people or just even people that have mental illnesses, you see someone walking down the street and they're talking to themselves. That's literally, that's what that is. I'm not sure if it's society or the system or the healthcare system failing us, but people need to know that there's tools out there for us to get help and to not be shameful to get help. There's no shame in having like a mental illness. There's no shame in having asking for help, because it's like, to me, it's like one thing that helps me too is it's like you look at the world, like looking at the world and how it is as far as like its like mental state, like as a whole, the way that the world is set up and stuff like that, like we're justified in a way of like being the way we are in a society that's this way, So to me, but it's like you're still responsible for the way that the way that you are, and like that it's your responsibility to actually do something.
Yeah. I wanted to give listeners kind of just a working definition of bipolar disorder. So it is defined as a mental condition marked by alternating periods of elation and depression. Do you, Shams, feel this was something you were experiencing your whole life, like even in your adolescence, and just didn't know or have a name for it?
Honestly, I don't think I did. I think it was what it was is why it happened in 2019 for me, because there's a lot of things when it comes to, I've read on Bipolar about this, is a lot of these things happen during major life events. A major life event for me in 2009 was I was a basketball player. I had dreams of going to the NBA. I was really good. I thought I was really good, but people thought I was really good and things like that. So it was I was 19 in 2009 because I just graduated. I just graduated in 2008, and it was just it was a decision. I guess I was facing in the sense of I have to do something else in life. That was just a major life, as far as a major turning point in life for me. After all that, I still I was still writing then. I was a blogger. I would blog and I would write things. Even during that was around the time Tumblr was the thing. And and I kind of said I would share my thoughts and stuff on there and write on there. But yeah, I would
So you were saying you played basketball, and then what happened in 2009? Did you decide that you weren't going to pursue basketball?
Yeah, it was that. It was just kind of it was the transition as far as it's just being a life event in the sense of oh, that's not gonna work when it comes to a male or man, especially getting out of high school. That's just oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna especially being a black male? It's what are you gonna do? I didn't have any of those things figured out. Ultimately, when it came to oh, I'm not gonna play ball, and I tried. I went to school too. But in a way too, it's I was realizing that kind of too wasn't for me at the time also. And I think that's what, I guess, I said, is a lot of changes can really offset someone that actually has bipolar, in the sense of and that was just, throughout high school, it was just structured. that was my first time being unstructured as a teenager. I was out of school. Like it was just, just kindergarten through 12th grade is structure. I'm going to school. I'm going to school Monday through Friday. Oh. I'm playing sports. Like I have to be here and there. And it was just like when I graduated high school, like that idea of structure was gone. Not like that, but it was just like I didn't really have like my mom and my dad really telling me what to do. So it's just like for me, so it's like honestly, I feel kind of just to me it was like that change and that transition just ultimately like kickstarted like my mood changes and like my going into mania and stuff like that. And it was just like that's when like it became a thing for me.
So talk to me about those symptoms for you. Like how does bipolar present for you when you go into a psychosis?
For me, to me, it really feels like me just going away from myself. Like I'm not present with my surroundings. Like yeah, I'm definitely not present. It's like it's one thing too that's the surest sign. Even sometimes that kind of helps me pull myself back in because it's like I have people around me that require me to be present. So it's just like that's I think that's one thing too, is like it's really important to have to that support system. Like whenever you feel yourself maybe getting manic or being hypomanic or anything like that, having people that are around you. Just even like your friends, being around other people is just for me is like can be real grounding. That's why I never really went manic or anything like that while I was in the military for the time period, is because I was constantly around people. And so it's just like there's always not like that, but the accountability that I had to take while
and the structure. Like you were back to a structured
structure. Not like that. I got out in 2020 and then boom, next year later in 2021, I get diagnosed. That's when I get my official diagnosis of bipolar disorder, because again, that was another transition, another change in like my structure.
Yeah. Can you take us through experience, like going to get the diagnosis? Like how did that happen?
I went to the doctor, went to the ER. And I went to the ER. I basically told them my symptoms. I was just like, I haven't been sleeping. I haven't been eating. I was losing mad weight. I was still smoking. I was smoking weed. Definitely like the grandiose thoughts, feeling like I was on top of the world, those type of things. But like I was coming down from it. At the same time, it's like I said, I was realizing there was a different, like that wasn't me. And it was just like, so I went to the ER and then told them like my symptoms, and then I didn't even know, but then they was like, well, we're going to admit you into the hospital. We're going to Baker Act you. And that, you know what that means? That means it's like, they're going to put you, they sent me to a psych ward, like just involuntarily. And like, so I was in there.
Did you say somewhere in that intake, did you say that you were like a danger to yourself? Is that what prompted them to do that?
I didn't even feel like I wasn't a danger to myself. It was just more like not even a danger to myself, but just I guess in the sense of I wasn't myself, and like that's really what it was. But I guess it's kind of funny too, but whenever I was diagnosed, that's around the time this did play a part in my diagnosis as well, or even how I became Shams Tabriz, the name. So this was around that time period too, is when I got heavily and deeply into Rumi's poetry. When I read Rumi's poetry and like I feel as if like the love and the presence of all of it, it does something to me.
Shout out to Rumi.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really takes me somewhere. I guess just to be blunt about it, like it got to a point, like I guess in the midst of like me being manic or whatever, like I felt like I was Rumi. Like I felt it got to that point that even I was trying to explain that. I was trying to explain that to like to the doctors and people that in there and they're looking at me like I'm crazy. So there would be, as far as like to mark my progress while I was in there in the psych ward, the doctors would come like every so often to my room and like come and they would ask me if I think I'm Rumi. Like they would ask me that like once a day. And it's just like the first 2 or 3 days, I'm telling them, I'm just like, I'm slightly still manic too. So I'm just like, I'm telling them, it's like, yes. Like I'm telling you this. Keep telling you all this. And like, but then like the fourth, as like the time got, as I'm in there, I'm getting it. I'm just like, I want to get out of here. Like I got to get out of here. And I was just like, just like, I get it. Y'all want me to say my name is Henry. For me, like when you go to a doctor or anything like that, like, or to a hospital, they're not there to validate that. They're not there to like, they're not spiritual practitioners, like they're there to give you medical terms and and do that type of stuff. And it was just like, to me, that spiritual connection, that love or like that divine feeling I get from certain things that like I feel in my heart or I feel in my soul. And it's like, yeah, I could have been like mixed up in like even my mania and things like that. But even at a baseline, even as me sober, even as me healthy, to this day, that feeling is still there. And that's why, and that's my whole being to being Shams Tabriz. The name, that's where the name comes from. The name comes from Rumi, of his spiritual mentor. Because his poems, like he wrote, I share like a lot of Rumi's poetry on my Instagram. And it's like, there's a collection of it that's dedicated strictly to Shams. Shams is over like 40,000 lines of poetry, of just beautiful poetry, just dedicated to like the love that they shared between each other. Just like whenever I'm reading it, I feel it to the point where it's like to me, I feel like as if Rumi is speaking to me. And it's just like, to me, it's just like, that's why like that's where the name comes from. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I feel like Rumi is speaking to me. So in the sense of like having that connection to Rumi, like that was just me in a selfless way of saying like I'll put myself to the side and be Shams for you. In a sense of not only that, but just everything that Shams represented to Rumi. And like that, I see so much beauty in that, not only that, and it's just like, it inspired me to like really, to even be the writer that I am.
Tell me a little bit about like the treatment plan, because one of the big concerns obviously for a creative is that once you get your diagnosis and you start medication, that your creativity starts to like be impacted.
I honestly think anyone would really, that's the thing I think a lot of people are afraid to work through, because it is something that does happen early on. Even taking any type of medication, you're gonna feel different like that. But like the thing is, like, it takes time to kind of like get back to yourself. It takes time to get back to yourself in those type of ways. But I think like I spent a good little bit of time just trying to like fight through that. And there's so many different type of like medication. It affects people different ways. There's something like, like one medication can make you feel this way. You really just have to being open to a lot of things, finding like what actually works for you, what combination of medication works for you. Like I take 2 different type of medications together.
And you feel like you found the combination that works for you?
Yes, I feel like that combination is like what? It's like quetiapine and like Depakote. Like that's like the mix that I take together.
Okay.
But like I said, it could be there's a lot of other different medications that you could take. Someone could say that, quetiapine and Depakote don't work for them. They hate it. Or like it makes them gain weight, or it makes them like, it gives them brain fog or anything like that. It's just like, it all depends on you. It all depends on your just autonomy, how you react to medicine. It's just a matter of working through those type of things, actually having the patience and just giving yourself the grace. If you are trying to go that route with like taking medication like that, just being patient with the process of it all and actually finding something that actually like that suits you and work with you.
Yeah. Did you do a combination of medication and therapy, or was it just a medication treatment plan?
Both.
Okay.
It's both. That's one thing too that like I feel from us. Like is the medication isn't enough. That was one lesson too that I came across. The medication isn't enough. Like the medication is just one level. Yeah, when it came like to, like I said, I was taking medication. I also was taking medication this past year in 2023. But like I said, I was still smoking. Like I was still smoking heavily. I was smoking like 7 joints a day, possibly at max sometimes. So it's like I said, I fell into like really bad habits. It got to the point where, like, I guess throughout my journey of like bipolar disorder, all of my like mania, like all my like episodes that I've ever experienced, they've always been like on the euphoric side. But like my last one that I experienced, it was like my first time dealing with like anxiety, dealing with paranoia, dealing with like suspicion, dealing with those type of things. So it's just like, that was like a very eye opener for me. So it's just like, not like that, but just seeing that side of bipolar. You know, it was just like, that was like, and like that's just really, they were honest, like I said, it lit a fire under my ass about really just like the severity of my mental health, or even like the severity of like my disorder when it comes to like taking just really doing like the actual work that actually needs to be done to stay stable, to reach the baseline when it comes to that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You talk about being a husband and being a father. How would you say that your being bipolar impacts your family? Or does it?
I would say it definitely does. To me, it requires me to really tap in and like that. But it's like, I guess for me, like me having a son in a way kind of saved me in a way. It's always, my son is like a very grounding tool for me. Like, because like I said, in 2018, when my sister passed, I found out my wife was pregnant, but like I didn't tell my sister for like a week. And then like the following, like that week, she passed. So like my son has been like a definite like grounding tool for me. So it's like, even like I said, even in the midst of me having like bipolar disorder, or in like even like when it came time to like me like smoking too much and stuff like that, like I've always been able to check back in, like, and tend to those type of things, especially when it came to my son. Like, I would definitely take like kind of like accountability for, like, I guess, like even when it comes to like my marriage. My bipolar disorder affected more so like my marriage and my relationship like with my wife. That was just me being present, even because of the bipolar disorder. I would say like one of the biggest things too is like it can make you fixate. People who even have bipolar disorder or even have mental illness or those type of things, those type of people kind of just have a very creative in a way too. Like I said, whenever, like I do feel like that sometimes and stuff like that. And it's just like I fixated on, like, for like a long period of time, I fixated on writing. I fixated on being like just being consistent with being a writer, to the point where it was, like I said, it caused me to neglect certain aspects of my relationship with my wife.
Yeah.
Like I said, those are like those bad habits that I was talking about. Like I fell into bad habits of not fully playing like my role in things in my daily life. So it's just like that's something that definitely affected my family. But like even like me stepping away from smoking weed, being in counseling, being in therapy, stuff like that, just getting sleep, exercising, and those type of things. Those are all tools to keep me grounded. Those are things that those are the things that really just help when it comes to my family.
Yeah. I appreciate just the vulnerability in you sharing this, because there is so much stigma behind it. And I do think that our society kind of allows for and perpetuates a lot of escapism. It's almost like, I remember when my dad passed away and I started going to therapy, and I was talking to my uncle about going to therapy, and he was like, therapy? He's like, what you doing that for? And I said, well, I go to therapy and you drink. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I think it almost is culturally more acceptable to just be at the bar 5 nights a week than it is to go to your therapist once a week. Did you feel like there was a stigma that you had the diagnosis, that you were going to therapy, that you were taking a medication? Was there any kind of feeling of this makes you a lesser of a man or something?
Honestly, yeah. Because, like I said, especially when it comes to one taking medication, especially in the spiritual world, especially with people that when it comes to even when it comes to social media, the spiritual approach to things, the holistic approach to things. People talk about taking synthetic drugs or taking this and that. And to me, it was just I was me just pushing past the idea. It was just me pushing past the feeling of if this is what I have to do to be stable and to keep my family, that's what I'm going to do, period.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, Shams, about the medication part is there are certain medications that we don't question, right? Nobody questions a diabetic taking insulin to replace the insulin that their body isn't producing, but really that is the same methodology, if you will, behind medication for your mental health. I know for myself, I can say during times where I experienced depression and went on medication, the way it was explained to me was that my body did not have enough serotonin in its reserve to maintain homeostasis, if you will. And so I had to take something to replenish that serotonin, and that's what the medication was. And it was never presented to me in a way I would have to be on medication forever. It was almost like another tool in the toolkit. I needed the medication. When my father passed away, I was having thoughts of jumping off my balcony. So I had to take something to help regulate the feeling of wanting to jump off the balcony. And even as you're talking, I know we're talking about bipolar and that medical diagnosis. I want to bring it back to something you said earlier. Any of us can go into a psychosis. Any of us can have a mental breakdown.
Yes. Anyone can crash out. Literally anyone can go into a psychosis. Anyone can crash out, have a mental breakdown just because they don't have the tools to get themselves out of it. And that's what happens to people. It's just not only that, people not only crash out or have one mental breakdown, they have a mental breakdown and never get out of it. And that becomes their life. And that becomes a cycle. Because some people just accept it as life because they don't have the proper tools and the resources to even know what it is they're going through.
And like I said, I think also what kind of contributes to that is it's more socially acceptable to drink and do drugs and to be promiscuous and to party, and that lifestyle, especially for the masculine, I think is more acceptable than it is to just go to a therapist.
Yes, definitely. Because I think, especially in the world, it's I guess, the being I guess when it comes to being a man and being a provider and things like that, I guess a lot of people push the, I guess grind culture. Go out there and get it, go provide for your family. And it's just I believe in that. But at the same time, it's just like I also believe in rest. I believe in rest to the biggest degree. I don't, because you burn out. People burn out. People in the world, you think you want to be rich. No, you want your time. You want more time in your life. Like if you had more time in your life to yourself and less money, you would be happy. Like not, I just, like if you were able to come and go as you please, even if life costs less money, but you were able to come and go as you please, you would be happy because you have your time. But the way that life is set up, the way that, the system is set up, is turning people into machines to make money. When, in reality, it's just like how much time and how much actual time do you have to even regulate your emotions, to regulate yourself, to even cultivate another hobby, to cultivate yourself, actually bringing fulfillment and actually working a job just to survive and stuff like that. I think definitely it's one, like the world plays a part in that too. And it's just like that. But at the same time, it's like we have to prioritize that. We have to prioritize that. So before any of it can change, we have to prioritize like our mental health, our, our being, so we don't get like that, so we don't burn out, so we don't crash out, so we don't have mental breakdowns and affect not only ourselves, but affect other people and the people that we love.
And we deserve that.
Yes, we deserve that.
This has been such a meaningful conversation.
Definitely.
And a big part of it is, I think it's so healthy for people to see the person behind the creative. Because if I'm just on your Instagram page, like I wouldn't know any of this. Like I would have no idea. When I am on your page, like it appears that I am following a human who is like living the most amazing life, like has the most beautiful marriage, the most amazing, like a lot of your content is about intimacy. So I always could tell like there was some heart and emotion and intention behind the words, but it did definitely appear that like you had this amazing life. And I think so many of us, we don't get to see like what's behind that. Like we don't, you know what I mean? Like we're just seeing like what is presented. And I think that having this conversation, like we need more of this. We need more of these conversations. Like we need more people who are showing up and able to like describe this struggle and describe like this journey, because I think to your point, so many of us, even if it's not like maybe mania and then lows, I feel like there are so many, especially Black men, who are in a constant state of depression.
Definitely.
And like live that way their whole life, and like just don't have a language for it, don't know what to call it. Yeah. And it's sad. And I think one of my intentions when I started my work and my platform was just to normalize the healing process for Black and brown people. Like I just wanted Black and brown people to understand, like, if anybody on the planet deserves therapy, like it's us. Like we are the least likely to go, but if anybody deserves it, it is us, like, so I'm just so grateful that you were willing to come on and tell your story. I do want to finish this conversation with, what would you say to men who are maybe struggling with their mental health in the ways that you did? What would you say to them? What would you recommend?
Well, I was like, I said earlier before we started, I said I don't like to give advice, but in this sense, like from someone that's actually, been through it, like I'm saying this for like advice. Like, don't be ashamed to ask for help. It doesn't make you less of a man to ask for help. It makes you more of a man. Like, because if you ask for help and you get the help, it'll make you a better man. It's just like, and that's the thing. So it doesn't make you less. And also too, I guess when it comes, like I said, with like we were talking about a minute ago, about with the, I guess the needs that the way that the world places things on like men's shoulders about things. It's like it's the way we carry it. It's just like there's a lot of ways to carry certain things. Like you don't have to carry it. You don't have to carry it like in unhealthy ways. You can carry something in a healthy way and and regulate it. And but like that, but you can regulate it. You can, like, for example, like jealousy. So there's so many different ways to regulate your jealousy in a relationship without attacking your partner. And that's the same thing when it comes to dealing with your mental health or dealing with depression. Like I said, just you don't have to self-soothe with unhealthy things. Because I guess with numbing yourself, that's the biggest thing. Don't numb yourself to it, because at the end of the day, what happens when it comes to stress and depression, when you numb yourself to painful things, you numb yourself to beautiful things as well. And that's where you fall. You can't, that's the thing of Westward. That's the downside to numbing yourself to pain. You numb yourself to everything else.
That's so beautiful how you said that. And so accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just and that's really when it comes to when you self-soothe, and when it comes to self-soothing, you even, so I have nothing against smoking weed or not judging anyone for drinking alcohol, but it's just when you numb yourself, or even any other vices that you may have, stuff like that. But like I said, when you numb yourself and you're trying to just push these things under the rug and stuff like that, and those things, they're eventually going to come around, come around again. And it's better to just go ahead and face those things head on, because it's like I said, you're going to numb yourself to everything.
Yeah.
You're going to numb yourself to the joy. You're numbing yourself to the joy, that you're not going to be able to enjoy the things that actually were going to bring you peace.
Yeah. In the first part of this series, I'm interviewing Dan Chen. We had that interview earlier this week, but what he is talking about in that episode is he was experiencing a gaming addiction, a porn addiction. It was all numbing behavior. And he crashed, he crashed and then went and got help. I'm just so grateful that you were willing to come on here, that we had this conversation. I feel like this is just the beginning. I'm hoping that you will come back. I would love to have you back to talk more about mental health and just relationships and things like that. I would even love to have your wife on. I think that would be a cool episode too. But I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful that I got to know you, because I'm like everybody else. I'm a fan, but I had no, idea of who the man was, So now I'm so grateful that I got to learn about who the man is. And there is a lot that, it's so interesting that you and I experienced in that 2018 timeframe that is kind of similar, and even for me, losing my dad was probably the catalyst to start my intentional healing journey. That's when I really started to take it seriously. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved every part of it. It was definitely this is my first time doing a podcast, a long time. Knowing that me being in the space to do it. So this was a beautiful space that you provided for me to do it. So
thank you for saying that. Do you want to let people know kind of how they can follow your journey? If there's anything coming up that you're involved in that you want people to know about? I feel I don't know. I'm going to ask you this. I don't know if we have not talked about this, so I don't know where you are in this part of the journey, but I feel like there should be some sort of book or something.
That's coming out this year.
Okay. I knew that, but I feel that energy.
Yeah. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's actually the name of it's going to be The Real McCoy Volume 1.
I love it.
Yeah. Also too, I'll kind of I have another book that I'm working on too. I'm actually going to call it Bipolar. So kind of the gist of that book, of the Bipolar book, it's going to be a mix of kind of just a mix of all of my kind of symptoms, kind of there's going to be quotes, but it's kind of giving a little run through of who I am during those type of things. Nothing crazy, but one of the symptoms of And honestly, like some people may say that my I guess like my writing sometimes. My wife thinks it is sometimes. She's like, you just write like that. You're just being hypersexual because you're bipolar. But to me, it's because I have all these Scorpio placements. But it's whatever. But like, I guess it's like that's what like the boy polar, like like boy polar and then bipolar. That's kind of that's where I'm going.
I'm so excited for you, and I'm so proud of you. Like, Shams, it's not, everybody does not have the courage, myself included at certain points in my journey, to actually just own their mental health and be like, this is what it is. This is who I am. Like, this is how I show up in the world, and it is what it is. Like, I'm so proud of you. Those books and your teachings and your writings are going to do for other people. Like, that testimony, how it's going to heal other people and provide them like a safe space to open up about their struggles too.
Yeah, that's gonna be, like I said, that's gonna be a beautiful thing. I think that's one of like the beautiful things, most beautiful things that I've found like in my journey of even like being able to be a mirror for people to actually see themselves, like part of themselves in your journey and stuff like that, and being able to relate to things like that. But apart from the books though, like I am getting back into music, getting back to making music that's more aligned with where I am now as a writer. And so just that's coming sometime this year and next year. That also with my pivot, like bringing my wife more into like the journey of everything that I'm doing. You'll be seeing more of her like on my Instagram, like us making reels and stuff like that, or just even my son, stuff like that. Like I said, just to me, like I'm just doing a big pivot right now. So yeah, that's what's kind of like what to look out for.
I'm excited. I can't wait to hear. So do you want to give people your Instagram handle just for anybody who might be newly listening and doesn't know where to follow you?
You can find me on Instagram at BOII_McCoy.
Yeah. So make sure to check out Boii McCoy if you're not already following. And yeah, let's continue to have these conversations and let's keep healing. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Take care.